Every era has its monsters. But what if the monsters we fear are really just a reflection of the times we live in? Today, we're going to explore how some of history's most notorious killers weren't just random acts of evil. Nope. They were shaped, understood, and even hunted using the tools, the fears, and the beliefs of their specific moment in time. Okay, let's dive into this. So, the big question we're asking today is this: have we always hunted monsters the same way? The answer? Oh, not even close. The journey from blaming demons to analyzing DNA, well, it's a fascinating story about us, just as much as it is about them. So here's our roadmap. We're going to start in the 1500s, a full-blown age of magic. Then we'll jump to the shadowy streets of 1888. After that, we'll see how killers learned to hide in plain sight in the 1920s. And then watch how psychology and forensics completely changed the game in the 80s and 90s. All right, let's kick things off with Act 1, Superstition and Savagery. We're talking about a time when the line between a crime and a folktale was blurry, to say the least. Evil wasn't psychological, it was supernatural. It wasn't a problem in your head, it was a demon at your door. And this is where it gets wild. Look at these two guys. On the left, Peter Nares wasn't just seen as a killer, he was a sorcerer, using the most horrific things imaginable for black magic spells. And on the right, Peter Stump wasn't just a man, he was the werewolf of Bedburg, who claimed the devil himself gave him a magic belt to transform. See, their crimes were understood entirely through the lens of dark, supernatural power. Now get this, Nares confessed to 544 murders. Okay, sure, this was under torture, so that number's probably way out there. But the reason for the killings is what tells you everything about the era. He wasn't killing for pleasure, not in the way we think of it. He was killing to harvest ingredients for his magic. And check this out. The justice of the time was just as brutal as the crimes themselves. The punishment for supernatural evil had to be this massive, horrifying spectacle. Ninger's execution took 3 days. It was a public ritual designed to literally purge his demonic presence from the community. To them, it was horrifying, but absolutely necessary. All right, let's jump forward in time. Act 2, Phantoms in the Crowd. The world is changing fast. Cities are exploding, gaslights are pushing back the dark, but they're also creating deeper shadows. And in those shadows, a whole new kind of killer learned to hide in the one place nobody thought to look, everywhere. And the ultimate phantom, the poster child for this new urban terror, of course, it's Jack the Ripper. The fear was no longer about a werewolf or a wizard, it was about a man who looked just like anyone else on the street. The horror was in the pattern, this distinct signature he left on these 5 victims. The precision, the removal of organs, it all hinted at a man with medical knowledge, which turned the idea of a healer into a monster. So, here's the kicker. Despite a massive police effort, we're talking thousands of interviews tracking hundreds of people, they never found him. The old ways of policing just couldn't handle the new reality of a killer who could just melt back into the crowd. The Ripper wasn't just a murderer, he was a ghost in the new industrial machine. And this fear of the anonymous killer wasn't just a London thing. It crossed the Atlantic. And it evolved. Decades later, we meet Albert Fish. He was the ultimate wolf in sheep's clothing, the gray man. This guy weaponized trust. He looked like a sweet, harmless old grandpa, which let him get close to families before he did the unspeakable. For 6 long years, the Gray Spud case was ice cold. And then, the killer made one single, arrogant mistake. Fish sent a taunting letter to the family, and you can see right here how that one act unraveled everything. Police work was getting smarter, more methodical. They traced the initials on the envelope, found where the paper was stolen from, and connected it to a boarding house room. A paper trail, not a magic spell, finally caught this monster. Okay, so that brings us to Act 3. The hunt evolves. This is where modern investigation really starts to take shape. The focus shifts from just what the killer did to why they did it, and what that tells us about who they are. So now we're in the 1980s Soviet Union, this place of rigid order, where a killer, like Andrei Chikatilo, the butcher of Rostov, just shouldn't have existed. He terrorized the country for years. The police were desperate. They even had him in custody at one point, but they let him go. Why? Well, it shows the growing pains of forensic science. Their tests showed his blood type didn't match the evidence, a super rare biological quirk they didn't understand yet. A scientific fact let him walk free to kill again. But this is the moment everything changed. When forensics failed, psychology stepped in. A psychiatrist, Dr. Bukanovsky, wrote this incredibly detailed 65-page profile. He wasn't looking at blood types. He was looking at behavior, at trauma, at the very shape of the killer's mind. And it was a dead ringer for Chikatilo. This was the birth of modern criminal profiling as we know it.
So while psychology was unlocking the mind of the killer, forensics was getting way better at decoding the body. In the hunt for La Bestia in 1990s Colombia, the killer, Luis Garavito, made these tiny little mistakes. He left behind a pair of glasses, some clothes, but in this new era, that's all they needed. From those small items, investigators built a startlingly accurate picture of him, a man of a specific height and age who was severely nearsighted and even walked with a limp. The monster wasn't a phantom anymore. He had a physical blueprint.
But, catching the monster is one thing. Justice is something else entirely. And this really shows the bizarre twists of modern law. Just look at these numbers. Garavito admitted to murdering more than 193 children. The court sentenced him to 1,853 years. But because of a legal cap in Colombia, that got knocked down to just 40 years. Then, because he cooperated, it was cut again to just 22. It's just a shocking disconnect that makes you ask a whole new set of questions. Just let that number sink in for a second. Over 193. And that's only the confirmed victims. The sheer scale of his crimes is almost impossible to comprehend. And it was made possible by his ability to just move through our modern world, targeting the most vulnerable people in it. So here's the bottom line. From werewolves and magic rituals to psychological profiles and DNA analysis, our tools for hunting monsters have gotten incredibly sophisticated. But here's the final question I want to leave you with. Have the monsters really changed, or have we just gotten better at seeing them for what they've always been?